and they are all hungry to learn, right, and upgrade. We've seen that happen again and again. That's happening today on the AI tools, and we have the ability to sell globally because of the services industry from India to the globe, right? So, and then the world's the market. So combining these three, the engineering talent, the ability to sell and build world-class products sitting out of India, I think it's a very good place to be, right? So, and to solve the problems of both enterprises, small, medium, large enterprises and consumers sitting out of India.
Hi, wherever you're joining us, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Tech Conversations, where we bring you insights from tech entrepreneurs, CXOs, and investors. I'm Hariharakli, and in this episode, Anand and Prayank Swaroop, partners at Accel, talk about the venture capital firm's views on the next decade of Indian startups. Accel recently announced its 8th India-focused fund at $650 million. And in this conversation, Anand and Prayank also talk about how both startup founders and venture capitalists in India are evolving as new generations come to the fore, bringing more original ideas to the market and more technical and business know-how to their endeavours. Okay, thank you both for doing this, Anand and Prayank. Really looking forward to this conversation. And congratulations on your new fund. You announced it pretty much on the heels of Swiggy's IPO, a successful one. If I may start with Swiggy first, I think it's been 10 years since you first invested in the company. Did you have an inkling that that founding team might get to this point?
Thanks, Hari. Thanks for having and thanks for the wishes. Yeah. I think as investors, we are also dreamers along with the founders. So when we invest, we want many of these companies to become the large, iconic, category-defining companies. So when we invested in Harsha, Nandan, Rahul and team at that time, we knew it was a special team doing something amazing. But it's very tough to figure out where the eventual outcome is going to be, right? Our hope is that good founders in large spaces, large categories can go and create the impact at a country level in this particular case. So it's played out quite nicely. Yeah.
And from a Accel, the VC firm's point of view, how would you rate this outcome? Would you say it compares with the Flipkart exit?
It's all these are special. So these are the ones we want more of these for the Indian ecosystem, not only for Accel. So it's all.
Okay.
When we invest in any company, we believe that the company is going to become very large. How large, we don't know. But it's a journey along with the founders. So Flipkart was very special for us. Swiggy, of course, and there are many more which are in the offing. So we hope to see more of Swiggy's and Flipkarts in the future. Yeah.
I mean, if you take these two companies in the context of the Indian startup ecosystem, from your investment in Flipkart to Swiggy, and then how the exits happened for these two companies, this as an example of a combination of how India has sort of changed as a market for startups and how your portfolio startups themselves, the best of them, have evolved along the way. Just think a lot about this.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question. I think in my mind, these first two companies are representative of the consumer economy in India and how technology is intertwined with that consumer economy. And it's probably for the last decade or so. But going forward, you're going to see new facets of technology companies going IPO in India and going public, and you will see, like fintech, you will see B2B marketplaces, software companies, which we have Freshworks, which went public in the US, but you will see more software companies going public in India. And I think emerging, the second trend in that is more deep tech and IP-led companies, right? So the first set of companies which came from India, we would call them lookalikes of Western businesses, which became very popular and big. And those business models came to India. But we are starting to see more companies, like, for example, Bluestone, one of our companies, has recently filed for IPO, which is a very India-centric, India-first kind of a business. So that business. Yeah, and I think you'll see more of newer models which are much more India first in the future.
Indian consumer, right? So I have to, going back to your early question, have evolved over the last decade, right? So we see a lot more uh, openness to transact online. Not just in urban India, but we are starting to see that in Bharat or the rural part of India where we're spending a lot of time as well, right? So I think the Indian consumer tastes have differed, and companies have stepped up to solve that, be it the Flipkart or the Swiggy's, urban companies, and all the consumer platforms that we can think of. That's one bucket, and that's for Indian audience. Then Priyank talked about B2B and manufacturing. So that can be for India or from India for the globe. So be it companies like Zetwork that Priyank can talk about more, where we've been partners from early stage, or Infra Market, or Captain Fresh. These are companies based in India, but serving the global audience, not just digital goods. So the third bucket would be software. We'll come to that. But these are physical goods from India, for India, and for the globe. So make in India. The third bucket would be software and AI-enabled companies from India, solving maybe problems locally, but also for the globe. Freshworks and the whole slew of SaaS startups over the last decade have created a lot of talent around that as well. Now with AI coming in, that's the third bucket, from India for the globe. So that would be the three broad areas, I would say.
Indian entrepreneurs are coming up with their own new ideas, and they don't necessarily need to look to the West to come up with the ideas. Even if you take AI, for example, yes, West has innovated in the AI and they are a step ahead, but going forward, you will see that technology being used by Indian entrepreneurs in their own original way, is what we believe.
Okay. So I think nice background and some context for your new fund. Can you walk us through your new fund, the eighth fund? I think $650 million is what you have announced. Give us a sense of where you want to sort of invest. I mean, you've mentioned several of these areas. Just walk us through that a bit.
Sure. Yeah.
So we talked about 4 or 5 areas where we are anyways looking. But first and foremost, we do very early stage investments. So we do 2 people and an idea kind of investments. And if you go back and look at Flipkart or a Swiggy, like take Swiggy for example, they were delivering only in Koramangala at that point of time. I think even within Koramangala, they were delivering only within neighborhood when we invested in them. And that's where we like to invest. So we like to come in very early in the companies and help the founders grow. Second, for the areas, if you look from our vantage point, there are 4 or 5 big areas. So one is consumer. Second is B2B and manufacturing. Third is fintech. Fourth is software service. And maybe you can call fifth as deep tech, which is emerging. Within these 5, you have sub-themes. Let me talk about B2B first. So in B2B, we have 3 sub-themes. The first sub-theme is formalizing India supply chains. And within that, for example, representative investments from us will be Infra Market and S4S. And if you take any Indian industry, the supply chains are necessarily not very on time, in full, professional, and use technology very little. So we are starting to invest in those supply chains and saying, hey, can this entire industry be rethought with a new supply chain, which is technology first? And that is one theme. Second theme is, with India becoming a go-to-market for supplier base globally, new companies are emerging which are trying to capture the global demand or supply them from India. And we're starting to look at those tech-led investments. So Zetwork is one of those in manufacturing. Captain Fresh does the same in the fish and seafood market. And then there is this whole technology layer which is emerging from India for global industries. You would call it Industry 5.0 essentially, where supplying to those industries is technology like preventing accidents, using IoT, using AI in factories is what also we are investing in.
So maybe I'll talk about consumer, and then maybe AI you can talk about. So on the consumer side, one is what we hear Priyank already touched upon, the India native ideas. Right, there are problems very unique to India. I'll give you an example. Weddings, we spend a lot on weddings, and it tends to be much larger than West. So we have a company called Meragi that's trying to organize how weddings are done and make it easier for the parents and who is organizing it, right? So that's one. Another is Orange Health, which is from getting diagnostics, the comfort of Swiggy, but in the diagnostic space. Like someone coming home, taking your blood. I know that has always been there, but can you quickly turn it around and have the results back to you in hours? Right, so that's another example. So India specific models, not necessarily equivalent ones or large platforms like that. The second I would say is our whole focus around Bharat, and we believe for India to we're seeing that happen, right? As India grows as an economy, there's going to be more opportunities, not just in the top 50 cities, but beyond that. So we're seeing a lot more interesting companies come up in that space, solving problems that are specific to the Bharat of India, what we are calling Bharat, right? So, which is the tier 2 plus, and then starting with maybe the top 20% of Bharat, which spends more than the urban bottom 50% of urban India. So it's a pretty large market. And again, the shift there is that in the last few years, the amount of expendable income, the disposable income, has shifted more here. More than 50% is spent on non-food now in Bharat as well. So it's a good thing, and going after different themes. Whatever worked in urban India, can we go after the similar themes there and solve specific problems there? Example there would be a company called City Mall, which brings grocery to Bharat, but in a slightly differentiated model, right, where the value for the customer is achieved, and a different delivery model as well. Another one is a company called Apna Mart, which is an omni-channel. It has its own store, but also delivers home. So different models for Bharat. So that's another theme. Third in consumer is the Gen Zs of India. I have two kids who are Gen Zers, right? So they tend to look at the world differently and spend differently. So can we solve with other companies going after Gen Z and solving new age brands, right? So example there would be a company called Numi, which is a fast fashion, very specific to the Indian audience. So those are the three broad areas within consumer that we are looking to invest in. Doesn't mean we won't look at other consumer opportunity, but these are areas where we have something called as a prepared mind, a thematic approach where we have a thesis in all these areas and proactively looking to find the best team solving interesting problems.
We see you all often tell us about how when you evaluate companies, especially in the early stage,
Yeah.
you look at people, products, and market size,
Yeah.
like the basics. I mean, now even general reporters like me are kind of familiar with some of these
Yeah.
things. You said the opportunity is pretty large on these fronts. Can you give us a sense of what you're seeing that gives you sort of the confidence that this combination will work?
Yeah, so I'll start macro. Like we are like roughly a 4 trillion economy going to hopefully wherever, the 8, right? So if you start from that level and you break it down, the big buckets of spend, if you take retail and everything retail, it's close to $1 trillion of spend. You go double click on that, how that is spent is one way to look at it. And you can look at the various categories within that. It could be anything commerce/retail, right? So that whole bucket, or it could be healthcare, it could be education, it could be financial products. These are, let's say, 4 broad areas where everyone spends, right? So, and if you see, and if you look at urban India, there's no questions. The premium India, there's no questions. Now, if you double click and you go and look at Bharat, about 500 billion of spend happens there also, but it's spread among 950 million people, not just a smaller set. And then if you again go deeper and you see the top 20% of them spend a lot of this, right, or a reasonable chunk. So I think if you take these same set of problems that are mostly solved in urban India and figure out specific solutions for the people in tier, like the 50 plus towns, like all the way into villages, are they getting the same kind of convenience, the same value, right, and the same selection? I don't think so. So that's where, to answer your question, the spend is available, right, and especially in the top 20% of Bharat, right? So, and can you provide the same selection, value, and convenience, which we are able to see here? Is what, and then we are seeing companies like, which you may mention, City Mall and Apna, doing this and good adoption. So people, instead of walking to the neighborhood store or what their older ways of thinking, are moving their shift shifting their spend to the newer age platforms.
Yeah, I think the way to think about this is first we identify like a decadal trend, something which is going to be here. Like Anand mentioned about Indians getting more money and more savings to spend disposable incomes, even in Bharat or tier 2 towns in India. Or for example, let's say in manufacturing and B2B, it's things like there's a global demand for India to be able to supply things to them. People are looking for new suppliers. Then second comes a problem, right? So problem or something which you can accelerate within that trend. So for example, like Anand mentioned about people wanting certain things which they are not accessible to them at a particular price point, even if they have the money or they don't have distribution in that particular region. In manufacturing, it is things like India has a very distributed supply chain, and you can't today get everything at scale from India's supply chain. So can we create a platform which allows you to get all of that together in one place in a very parallel manner, so you can have massive capacity. And then so you have this kind of a problem statement. Now are there enablers and solutions which we can go after and invest in to make this happen? So that is the way to think, right? So if you look at AI, for example, or fintech, for example, right? So Indians are becoming richer, at least the top 5%. Where are they going to spend their wealth? Where are they going to invest it? So you can go and solve for solutions for that, right? So that is how we think about what are the big trends which are going to happen, and then go invest behind that.
So what you said about the decadal trends caught my interest, because I was thinking that it's a sort of a natural thing, right? This is the only way to do it because it's never been done before in India. I mean, in the sense, for example, in Swiggy, you had to be patient for 10 years for them to literally from scratch build what they have built, because it did not exist. And now you're thinking along the same lines, because there will be other founders who will build in some ways things that don't exist today, or is that a little bit better today in India?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. When we invest, we expect to be invested for a long period of time. So we go in, as Prayank mentioned, it's two people and an idea, maybe early signs of a product, but many times very early. So the journey is what is special for us. Working with the founder over, let's say, 7-10 years. In most Flipkart, we were invested initially in 2008. We exited only very recently, right? So, or a Freshworks, we invested in 11, 12, and then there, or Swiggy in 15, right? So, and maybe things will grow faster because of the economy. That's your question, right? But our intent is not to, or let me put it a different way. Our expectation is that good things take time, right? Yeah. And then we have a decadal view, mainly not because any constraints, but good companies anywhere take from 7 to 10 years to mature and become listable, right? Entities. Global, I think in the US, when we studied last, average age for IPO was 12, 13 years. Right? That's in a very developed market. So why should it be any different in India? If anything, it'll probably be slower because we are a much more earlier stage economy that's growing. So our view going in is to find the best teams that we want to partner with for a long period of time. And whether it's 7 years, 10 years, 12 years, I don't think we are very particular about it. As long as can this really change the way a particular industry operates, and can these founders work in that industry for a long period, or are they motivated to really shift spends using technology and their focus on that particular space? That's what we are more focused on. Hopefully that answers your question.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
In AI, if I can switch to that, can you give us a sense of the complexity involved when you look at people, products, and market size in AI in the Indian context?
I think first, the complexity is the pace at which AI is growing itself, right? So it's just so many things are changing in the market. Every day there's a new technology, new company. What you are building on today as a base truth might change itself. So that itself is very hard. So it's very hard to think and say what is, let's say, the programs, algorithms, whatever you're building today are going to be relevant 1 year from now or not. I think that the ground itself shifts, right? So that is the first problem. And the second problem is, I think, just talent, right? So there is a lot of talent in India, but is it short-staffed or is it short-handed simply because they don't have access to those networks of technologies, those first access of research in the US. They are sitting in India. So how do we? And Accel tries to bridge the gap between the two, right? So we have a US office as well. So we connect our Indian entrepreneurs through them to those, so that we enable access. So, but that is a big question, right? Do we have enough people who know the cutting edge of technology or not? And like I've said it many times, I think Indian academia and Indian AI researcher and Indian AI companies need to work together more closely. I feel sometimes they are in silos. I think those are the top two biggest ones. And then third comes the fact that the majority of spending is still happening in the Western markets, not in India on AI. The Indian corporates are a little bit slow in adopting. I mean, they are getting there, but not in the same amount of volume, not in the same speed. So most of the Indian entrepreneurs which we are looking at, they have to go and tap the US market and US customers. And again, sometimes they are at a little disadvantage in doing that because they don't know who to talk to. They are not from the same schools. They are not in the same networks. And again, their Accel tries to play a part in helping connect those two of them over there.
And the thesis, the areas.
So good point. So I think in terms of thesis, so what we've done is given what we know, like these are the problems and this is the opportunities, we've tried to crystallize into a couple of segments where we are more confident of the India advantage for AI. So first of them being AI-led services. So India has a very large service economy in IT service companies. And each of these are anyways being fulfilled from India. Now, can we make these more profitable, higher margin? Can they do more complex work because of AI? So we are looking at each and every industry, be it IT services, be it KPOs, be it call centers, and saying, hey, where can AI be enabled? Because Indian companies already have access to those customers. There's already a belief that India performs at a certain level, and with AI, can we improve those services? So that is one theme which we are going after. The second theme we have been very successful at is Indian founders doing vertical AI softwares. A very good example of that is Zenoti or Ramagi from our portfolio. And these companies were built from India. They are unicorns, very healthy, profitable, and at massive scale. And are there similarly industries which are going to be disrupted with AI, where Indian entrepreneurs have unique insights and they can go after those? Because the customers over there are starved for such solutions. And these are customers, these are niche areas from the US perspective, but large enough for Indian entrepreneurs to go after. So that's another theme of sorts which we're looking at. And third is developer and developer tools. So India is one of the largest markets with a huge number of developers. I think we are globally the second or third largest market of developers in the world. And a lot of development solutions our developers are interacting with. They know what it takes to build world-class solutions, and they know how to build the solution. So that's the third theme which we are going after. Anand has recently done an investment called Simply Smart in that space. So we are looking at these three, I would say, themes and more in the space of AI.
And as AI develops, I think there'll be more consumer-facing applications also coming up, right? So continuously. So the applications could be for global opportunities, software opportunities, or it could be Indian consumer opportunities applied to, let's say, initially starting with the digitally delivered services, let's say in education or maybe in financial services, like different areas. We have one early stage Atoms investment, which is our pre-seed in a education platform called Arivihan. So there are more such opportunities that will evolve also, because AI is becoming more and more accessible to everyone to start developing for the consumer side as well.
So very specific to, AI investments. On the one hand, there is the worry about missing out on something that could potentially be really big. On the other hand, with this level of complexity, and also, like you said, from a pure science and tech perspective, Indian entrepreneurs lag Silicon Valley or elsewhere in the advanced economies. So how do you, when you put on your early stage investors hat, how do you actually finally decide on, what are the check boxes in order to invest in a really, a company that's actually developing AI products?
Yeah, I think so. Majority of companies which we are finding in India in AI, typically tend to be application companies. They use the AI stack, and they use the AI stack to bring about new workflows and new use cases. They are not necessarily developing the fundamental LLM models, and that is okay. I mean, there are enough opportunities which are going to get created in that space. Like, I mean, the crude analogy of that is if you look at when the internet optic fiber cables were laid, yes, there is a huge amount of internet was created at that particular point in time, but the value accrete actually to applications, right? So the Salesforce of the world or the Swiggies of the world are all built on internet, essentially. So we're looking for those applications. We might not be the ones creating, Indian entrepreneurs might not be the one creating the LLMs today, but they're going to create the apps which can win the world and create massive value. So that is how we look at it. With respect to evaluating these companies, I think first and foremost comes an entrepreneur who's able to understand and say, okay, what can I make with the tools available to me today, and how these things might change tomorrow, and how I can leverage that. So they have to be able to be, like Anand said, thinking about the future, the dreams, and saying, okay, this is all what I want to build. And the technology might not be available today, but I will put it in my roadmap. And whenever it becomes available, I'll make it happen. So they are already thinking ahead of a lot of other people. So they are not bounded by the shackles of what can they see today. They have to see in the future. I think that is super important. Second is, I think, being smart about how to enter customers, going after finding those first few customers, ideating with them, creating the solution, and then basically saying, hey, this is working now, let me go at a very fast pace to many more customers. Because at least in AI, it sounds like and feels like it's almost like a land grab, because customers are also hungry for AI solutions. So people are looking. So you have to be not just good at building the product, but also good at identifying and creating some initial successes and then taking that to market. So the other skill is also required.
Yeah, I think just to add, I think it's a technological shift, right? So initially with the internet, Web 1.0, or then with AWS, the ability to develop for everyone to do, the SaaS wave took off, or mobile smartphone, like the app stores and all that, the iPhone post that, and Android. And similarly, I think there's a shift in the whole infrastructure layer that's happening globally, and it's going to continuously keep evolving and get better and better. Like as an example, like initially chatbots were there, like in the AI-enabled chatbots have made it almost ubiquitous now, and voice-based bots are coming up. Then why can't it be video-based? Like you could be talking to a AI Prayank or AI Anand like pretty soon. I think we're seeing early signs. So I think just making it real. So I think the tech layer is going to get more and more, for lack of a better way, commoditized, right? So it's going to get accessible for everyone, which is great. And then India is a really good engineering base. So that's our advantage. And they are all hungry to learn, right, and upgrade. We've seen that happen again and again. That's happening today on the AI tools. And we have the ability to sell globally because of the services industry from India to the globe, right? So, and then the world's the market. So combining these three, the engineering talent, the ability to sell and build world-class products sitting out of India, I think it's a very good place to be, right? So, and to solve the problems of both enterprises, small, medium, large enterprises, and consumers sitting out of India.
You briefly mentioned deep tech a couple of times. Can you talk about what emerging areas are sort of maybe on the periphery, but you're keeping your eye on them in terms of potential investments from the new fund? And within deep tech, I'm interested in what you're seeing that looks really promising to you as well.
Well, I mean, deep tech is a very loaded term because it combines so many technologies. Right. So we are looking at robotics. We have done a few robotic investments. We're looking at quantum computing. We're looking at advanced material science investments. I think those are the top three. We have also done some investments in immunotherapy kind of investments as well. So I think those are some of the spaces where we're looking at. And I think the gestation period for some of those is quite long. It takes long time to research and IP and prove. There's a higher chance of failure, but they are fundamental science, which is changing the world, right? So it takes time and patience.
Yeah, and then the best researchers from India and from around the globe, many of them are Indians, right? So here or diaspora, and they want to do something cross-border as well. The world's become more and more flat. So great research coming out of anywhere, and then a big engineering team and everything else sitting out of India developing it. I think those are also possible across all the areas Prank talked about.
I want to switch gears and ask you about your own personal experiences as VC investors. Can you both just talk a bit about how you got to come to be in Accel, to be VC investors?
Anand, you go first.
Highs and lows along the way.
No. So it's been a good journey. I was a engineering grad, did my undergrad in India and masters in the US. Post that, I was at Intel developing chips and engineering and engineering management roles. Then during my MBA is when I got a flavor for investing during the summer when I interned with Intel Capital, and really liked the aspect of working in the confluence of technology, people, and business, right? Which is what, at the end of the day, a VC investor does. So post business school, I ended up working with a fund in Boston for a few years. And personally, me and my wife, we always wanted to come back to India, right? So post our kids, we decided to pack our bags, move back. And I'd made a list of all the funds at that time in India and started talking to all of them, and really enjoyed my conversation with the founding partners of Accel, at that time Erasmic, when we initially started. And then we became part of the Accel family in 2008, and fortunate that they took a chance on me and then moved back with the team here in 2009-10. And since then, been part of the team here, and it's been a good journey, right? So today, looking back, it feels like, okay, everything's good and everything. But at that time, it was not a very obvious thing saying that India will be a really important destination for venture capital investments and for startups. And today, everyone is realizing that India is a great hub for it, right? So it's been, but it wasn't always the case. But just getting the next round done for some of our companies itself used to keep us up at night, and then slowly that has improved. There's more capital coming in, and then the next wave of questions were around, okay, you built companies now, where are the exits going to come? So we're fortunate to be part of some of the large exits from India, be it a Flipkart through an M&A or a Freshworks listing globally, and Swiggy in India. So now that question is also to some extent answered, and the Indian public markets is a lot more receptive of technologically different and disruptive businesses coming out of the Indian VC ecosystem. So that's also a good thing for the Indian ecosystem. So it's been a good journey so far, but I'll leave it with saying that I think the best is the next decade. So these were all the ingredients that have come together. Now we're very looking forward to finding even greater opportunities and founders who believe they can change not just India but the world. So I think the ambition of Indian founders has gone up quite a bit, which is amazing. So I think it's a good time to be in the Indian startup and VC ecosystem.
Yeah, I think for me it's been like a Bollywood movie. So I went to IIT Delhi, and this was in like '99, right at the internet boom time, which was happening. So 2000. 99, everybody in all of our seniors got jobs, multiple jobs. In 2000, nobody had a job, and everybody started talking startups. So because of that reason, I ended up with, like, in summer vacations, working with some of my friends, seniors, startups who had nothing better to do because they couldn't get jobs. And that led to, I was lucky enough to be in a mix of people where I ended up being flatmates with Sachin and Bini Bansal when we all graduated from IIT Delhi together. So, and then Dipinder was a very close friend. Albinder was a very close friend. All of us are like you can call it IIT Delhi, same time, almost like 1 year junior to me. And we all were good. And so for me, it was very visual, like health card started in front of me. We were all seeing all of this happening. People were asking the questions, why can't I do this? And interestingly enough, we were like 5 or 6 roommates. We basically, when Sachin and Bini started, nobody wanted to bet on them. Everybody was like, you guys are crazy. This is never going to work. Nobody in India uses the internet for all of this. And at that time, I did not know what VC was. And they got money, and we were like, okay, what is this VC? I went off to B school. Got to know there's something. Till that point in time, everybody wanted to be a management consultant, work in McKinsey. Then you got to know there's something called VC. So you can go join a VC as well. Funnily enough, I actually interviewed for one of the other VC firms right out of B school. And the advice I got was, you are good as an entrepreneur. You should become an entrepreneur. So I said, okay, that's funny. Then Sachin connected me to Accel. He introduced me to Accel, and he said they're looking for somebody. I was a product manager in a bank at that point of time, and one thing led to another. I ended up at Accel. So the last 15 years, 14 plus years, I've been at Accel now. But interestingly enough, all of these were friends, and I initially never thought that these could become large companies. But they were building and they were sharing their stories with me that, okay, this is where we are having a problem. This is where, I don't know. So like very insecurities of an entrepreneur at that point of time. So you're like, oh, my company is 50 people now. I don't know what everybody is doing. And so I always was more aware of those things rather than how a VC investment happens. And then when I became a VC, it was interesting enough, like Anand, Prayank, Subrato, Mahendran, all of them, Shekhar, all of them were teaching me how to think about investments. And it was all about, you unlearn what has been taught to you in the Indian education system, I would put it that way, to get a job and think, completely remove all the risks. So it's all about risk taking and going after and punching very big. When every VC who joins, I used to think, okay, why don't we just do investments which are okay with 100 million exit, safe, we will make money. But now looking back, it was, the big thinking now is that you have to go after $10 billion outcomes. And that is possible. At that point of time, it didn't seem possible in India 14 years ago. Now it seems possible. Now it can be, in fact, one of the discussions we were having with one of the LPs was, will there be $100 billion technology companies listed on the Indian stock market also in the next decade or so, possible or not? It would have been unheard of, 5 years ago or 6 years ago to think and dream of some of those things. So there's a lot of unlearning which for me has happened. Thinking about large outcomes, thinking about fast-moving growth, not thinking of, it'll be okay, rewriting and imagining the future. So there's a lot of new stuff you need to do as a VC, and which has been my learning. And the second part was, India, when I joined, everybody was only thinking of consumer investments, and nobody was thinking of anything beyond consumer in India. Then SaaS started happening, Freshworks happened, Shekhar did it. We're like, oh wow, we can do these kind of investments from India. Then B2B happened. I was learning from Mahendran, one of our B2B other marketplaces. So okay, this is possible. So I did my own B2B investment in Zetwork. It worked out well. Then we had fintech. The UPI movement happened in India. So I think a lot of, as a VC, what I've realized is you need to understand what is going to happen, what is happening now. Like Anand said, technology shifts, regulation shifts, changing in population, like Gen Z, and like these are completely new, right? So dating investments, like I have never understood any of them, but younger team members, they get it, right? And they do, and those companies become large. So I think it's very interesting. I think for me, VC has been, like I said, a Bollywood story. Every time there's some twist and turn, and it's a thrilling journey.
Prayank's a good dancer, so Bollywood. Good.
Yeah. You mentioned the first founders of what became Accel India Erasmic Venture Fund, so Subrato, Mahendran, Prashant, Gagan. And you also mentioned new team members. So, from Subrata's, from their time to folks like you who joined around 2010, 2011, to those who are now joined in the 20s, what has changed that stands out to you from one quote-unquote generation to the next one?
What has changed is every new generation is much smarter.
And what has not
right?
changed?
If I were recruiting today, I don't know if I'll get hired back into Accel. So it's very, very smart set of people. What has changed is that great talent. To Prayank's point, there's the number of people who want to join VCs, and the startup ecosystem has grown exponentially in the last decade, which is great, right? And what has not changed, at least for us, is your other question is, I think the cultural values that we have as Accel, we want to work together collaboratively, internally, be ethically very clean. We have a very clear set of guiding principles or values that we operate, and that is evolved also as we go forward. And from Subrato, Prashant, Mahendran, like the founding partners to the next set of partners, all of us, and the future generation, that's something that we collaborate on defining it and working with it. And then that's very important, because at the end of the day, as we discussed, this is a long game. The VC industry, there's nothing going to happen in, forget a few years. It's a decadal journey. So are we working with people that we are happy working with and with values that we as an organization agree on? That's been super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what Anand is saying, I think a slightly different perspective. The OGs of Accel India, they were entrepreneurs in their own right? So they had, I mean, imagine going to US and saying, give me money because India will create, $100 billion kind of opportunities at that time. I'm talking about 15 years back or 16 years back. Like it's just, I think, much before, right? 2 decades. Right? I think it's very different and very difficult. Compared to then to now, the next gen, I mean, startup is a culture, it's everywhere. You have Shark Tanks of the world. People know what a VC is. I remember the time when I had to explain to my father-in-law what I do, and he ended up saying you're a money lender, right? So it's a much more nuanced society. Societal norms have changed. People want to be entrepreneur first and then do a job, right? So it makes our life easier. It makes our job easy because people are thinking to be startup first. I can join a startup. I mean, 14 years ago when Flipkart started, it was hard to, people were used to ask questions, should I join this startup? I mean, there's no, will they shut down? There's no salary, fixed salary. I don't know whether this company has funding or not. I think all of that has changed. People are now want to work for startups rather than work for a large company. So that has changed. From a VC perspective, a lot of our younger VCs, they tend to be, I would say, they come in with a knowledge of how VC should be, either because they have been an entrepreneur before and they already have interacted with VC, so they understand, they are more empathetic towards founders. I mean, I don't claim myself to be very empathetic to founders because I'm a VC, I'm a career VC, right? I haven't been in their shoes as much. I've tried to be a founder, but I've not run a company for 2-3 years. I've not managed hundreds of people. I've not seen the ups and downs. But some of our younger generation tends to be a lot more empathetic because they have been in those shoes. And you will see, I think going forward, if I put on my hat, a lot of successful founders are launching their own VC firms, or a lot of successful founders, or even not so successful founders might join VC firms. And you'll see furthering of the Indian VC ecosystem from that perspective.
Maybe one last point, not related to the question, but it's an important one to me. I think the fear of failure is going down. Right? It's a very important part for, because startup game is about trying your best and not everything is going to work. And in fact, majority are not going to be large outcomes. Only a small fraction are going to be large. The fear of failing and how the stigma attached with it has pretty much gone, or almost gone, I would say, as long as the individual is okay with that. Both investors, and more so for investors is easier because of the portfolio, whereas for the founder and the team, right, it's their only thing, right? So, but people starting something, failing, and then starting again, and getting, maybe sometimes not failing multiple times and still starting, maybe not great outcomes and starting. I'll give you a couple of examples. Bluestone co-founded Chuck Puck for us, the first generation. It didn't work out great. Then he started Bluestone. We backed him, right? So, or Neeraj Spinney, one of our founders, like he had been an entrepreneur twice before. Spinney was his third attempt. Or even if we talk about Swiggy, Bundle was started with a different objective, then pivoted to this. So all this, sometimes or most of the time, startups don't work out. It's okay. But are you willing to get up and then take the learnings and start again and go for bigger and more bolder goals? And that we're seeing, not just founders, but like yesterday I got a call from a CFO from a company who's moving on. He's moving on because that company was running out of money, right? So, and he had to find a different thing. So great. There were 3 people who were happy to talk to him immediately, same day, right? So a decade ago, maybe that wasn't possible. People would think, what happened? Why? But now people understand startup is that, right? We have to try, you take a decadal view there also, and maybe think, okay, in a decade you can do 2, 3, 4 startups. Even if one of it works, we'll stay and build, make it to be big. But if it doesn't work, we'll move to the next one and the next one. So I think that's a really good thing for the ecosystem.
You guys were unique in some ways that you're international pretty much from the get-go. That's one thing. And also it was very fascinating to read about the name Accel and how it came from the music term accelerando. I heard about this in the conversation of Arthur Patterson and Jim Schwartz in 20VC about 3 years ago. That was very nice. I'm sure you've heard this. And in today's times, that seems even more in tune, I mean, pun intended, with the way AI is, you know. And the third point, of course, is your original motto of being inspired by Louis Pasteur's, you know,
Fortune favors the prepared mind. Yeah.
Right? So, where do you see Accel India in 10 years? And do you think that there is some evidence to say that there'll be a Facebook-like exit out of India?
I would say why not, right? So I think we talked about the market. India is one of the largest markets growing, and Indian founders are able to build not just for India, for the globe, right? And then the public markets are welcoming. Like 3 major conditions that are needed are there, and founders are thinking bigger and bigger. So I would say why not?